Are you tired of your valuable ideas and suggestions getting lost in the shuffle? Well, that is why I'm introducing Direct Suggest, the revolutionary digital suggestion box that puts your voice front and center. With Direct Suggest, you have the power to make a difference in your organization. Direct Suggest provides value to organizations in various industries worldwide, including notable brands like Comcast, TD Bank, and Nokia. And here's the best part. Direct Suggest only costs 50 cents per employee per month, making it an affordable solution for businesses of all sizes. Plus, they have an incredibly high ROI and savings potential with an average 33 times return on investment. The implementation process is also a breeze. Once committed, setting up Direct Suggest from start to finish can be completed in as quickly as a week or less. Don't let your ideas or your team's ideas go unnoticed. Visit directsuggest.com today and start by making a difference with Direct Suggest. Use the promo code HUMANHR for your extended 60-day free trial. Again, visit directsuggest.com to learn more, and remember to use promo code HUMANHR for an extended free trial. Direct Suggest, where your voice matters. Welcome to the Bringing the Human Back to Human Resources podcast. I'm Tracy Chernoff, and I've spent my entire professional career in HR. Each week, we'll explore the delicate balance between people and business with the aim to reconnect the two and create meaningful outcomes. Listen in as I share my own experiences, challenge the status quo, and chat with guests from various industries about our mission to bring the human back to human resources. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Bringing the Human Back to Human Resources podcast. Thank you so much for being here for another week. And don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you're catching this episode. And I have to tell you that I am beyond stoked to be having this conversation with someone that I really admire in the HR space. And so before I intro him, I just want to mention that we are going to be doing a full overview, deep dive, sharing our opinions on everything that's going on with SHRM and the state of DE&I in the world today. So I would like to welcome my esteemed guest, Enrique Rubio, who is an HR tech and future of work expert, keynote speaker, and founder of global communities like Hacking HR. Enrique is one of the top 100 HR global influencers. He was the founder and CEO at Management Consultants, a firm specializing in HR in Venezuela. And before Management Consultants, Enrique worked in the telecommunications sector as a senior project engineer for Telefonica and several other companies in the early to mid 2000s. Enrique is a guest author in several blogs about innovation, management, and human resources. Most recently, Enrique worked as an advisor to the CHRO at the Inter-American Development Bank. And Enrique frequently speaks about topics ranging from DE&I&B, which is obviously super important to us today, the future of work, HR strategy, employee experience, and technology, among others. Additionally, Enrique designs hundreds of learning programs for the HR community in the form of events and short-term programs. Enrique is a Fulbright scholar and electronic engineer with an executive master's in public administration from Maxwell School at Syracuse University. And if that's not enough, I must say that, Enrique, I am obviously a huge fan of yours. You and I have had the opportunity to speak before, and I was really blessed with the opportunity to be a speaker at the 2022 virtual conference with Hacking HR. So I'm just so grateful that you've taken time out of your very busy schedule to spend time with us this week.
Well, thank you, Tracy. Thank you for first of all, for reading my entire bio. I appreciate that. I always say I'm just Enrique, and I appreciate you acknowledging the work that I have done and my career, and thankful that to be sharing the stage with you today and talking about very, very important topics like DEI&B, which has been, of course, front and center in the past few weeks, ever since SHRM did what it did with the word equity. So I'm sure we will talk more about that. So I don't want to get too far ahead of myself.
We are going to talk about it. Of course. And I have to tell you for everyone listening or watching, it is July 18th. This news broke, what was this, last Tuesday?
Yeah.
So just about a week ago, a week and 2 days. And the moment the news dropped, I was like, who am I going to talk about this with? Because sometimes I feel like I'm in my own echo chamber. And I was like, I can't just talk about this myself. And I was like, let me really think about people that I think do a really good job of talking about DE&I and also prioritizing DE&I&B. And so you obviously came up for me. And as I was thinking through this, there's so many people that I follow on LinkedIn or that, naturally just come up in my newsfeed were really referencing you and Hacking HR, of course, and all of these other communities and companies that you work with that really do a very nice job of emphasizing the importance of DEI&B. So that I just, for all the listeners, I really want to emphasize that, Enrique's bio is what it is because of the work that he's done. So please, make sure you are not just consuming his content here on this episode today. So Enrique, let's just start at the top. I'm going to remind everyone who maybe, for those who are not aware or familiar with what has gone on in the last week, SHRM did decide to remove equity from their DE&I acronym or equation, as I like to say. And so now instead of IE&D or inclusion, equity, and diversity, they are just inclusion and diversity. Yeah. So what were your initial thoughts on their decision to remove the E or equity?
I originally thought, wow, can't they be more wrong about what they do, right? I mean, I thought it was ridiculous to not just to drop the E from DEI&B, and they don't talk about B, by the way, but I thought it was ridiculous to do it. But then I read the explanation, and you have a little bit, I don't have a lot of hope with SHRM, by the way, but I had a little bit of like a little tiny bit of like, maybe there's a good thing going on here, and maybe they have a good reason for this. And then the explanation was that there were two reasons for that. Number one, they thought that a lot of the DEI strategies have failed, and they blamed equity for that. So pretty much they abandoned their responsibility by saying, because this has failed, then we're going to make it a little easier for us just talking about D&I, rather than saying, well, it's failed because maybe we haven't talked enough about E or equity, right? So that's the explanation number one. And explanation number two, which is even more ridiculous, was that the equity this is what they said, that equity is so important that they were dropping the E from the name, and they were focusing on diversity and inclusion as the means for equity. And all I was thinking was, it's interesting, but I think for most people who have a little bit of common sense, if you think that something is important, you talk about that something. You don't stop talking about that something, right? So, for example, and this has nothing to do necessarily right now with the context of our conversation, but SHRM has been talking a lot about artificial intelligence just because they are jumping on a bandwagon that everybody else is on right now, or most people are trying to get on, and they know it's a concept that is sexy and sells. But if I want to talk about artificial intelligence, because I know artificial intelligence is important, I don't stop talking about the concept of artificial intelligence. I say artificial intelligence, AI, until the end of my days, because that's exactly what I consider to be important and what I am talking about. So you can't say equity is important and therefore I'm dropping it out of the name because I consider it to be important, because that is ridiculous. That doesn't make any sense at all. So I was shocked to hear that, and more importantly, I was shocked not just by them dropping it, but by those explanations that they gave about to explain why they dropped sort of the equity part of the DEI concept that they were supposed to be embracing before. So I think, like most people in the HR space, I think it was shocking news, not surprising, because I don't think we have a lot of hope with SHRM, in terms of like
not at all, zero,
in terms of like what they are embracing, and kind of like the ideas that they want to put forward. But I think this one, was a little bit of the drop that kind of like, the end of the straw, right? So yeah, that's kind of like, that was my initial reaction to this.
Well, it sounds like you and I had a very similar reaction. And first of all, thank you so much for really helping us to understand in context what this felt like and what this kind of means. And we're going to break it down even further. But for those who maybe didn't see the post, I'm going to link it. I should probably make sure I get a screenshot just in case they decide to delete it, even though they probably won't.
Could. I mean, they could probably do
which
it.
They could. Yeah. They could. So the thing, and you kind of touched on this, the thing that really kind of threw me for a loop is that they said, and I'm reading it here, by emphasizing inclusion first, we aim to address the current shortcomings of DE&I programs, which have led to societal backlash and increasing polarization. I was like, come again? I was like, wait a second. So the Society of Human Resources Management is removing equity from their DE&I equation, which doesn't even include belonging, which is a shortcoming already. And then they're saying that by focusing on inclusion, they're going to drive forward a better approach, basically, to DE&I. It does not make sense. I actually did an Instagram live on this last week because I was so fired up, and I haven't done an Instagram live in probably like 2 years. So I was like, of course, SHRM is going to do this to me. And I had to say, like, I have never really been that big of a fan in recent years, I should say, because of some of these things that, again, to your point, this wasn't so surprising because of things that kind of have been unfolding with SHRM and things like that, and some of their obvious, leadership decisions that they've made. But at the end of the day, I think my initial reaction after the shock that I had, very similar to your reaction, is that it doesn't make sense for an HR organization, one that companies really look to for designing programs, for approaches to things, for certifications that validate their employees' HR experience before they have experience. I mean, it really sends the message that equity is not important enough to keep in an acronym. Like it's such a grandstanding approach, I should say, to say publicly, we care so much about DE&I that actually the programs are not meeting the expectations that we have, and we're removing equity. And not only are we removing equity from the tenets of this design, we're infusing it into inclusion. And so the thing that got me so fired up is that you physically cannot have equity. I'm sorry, you physically cannot have inclusion or diversity without equity.
Yeah, you can't.
Because you just can't. And actually, I think you were one of the HR influencers and thought leaders on LinkedIn who reshared a very notable and commonly shared photograph or picture, I should say, of the difference between equality and equity, which is very often misunderstood.
Yeah.
And equality is everyone having the same box to stand on to see a baseball game.
Yeah.
And equity is the box having different heights to it based on someone's height in order for them to see the game. And I like to take it a step further and give some context here that equity is having a Zoom meeting, right? And you have closed captioning turned on in the event that someone is hard of hearing.
Yeah.
But inclusion is everyone getting the Zoom invite.
Yeah.
But there's no equity in that Zoom invite if you don't consider those who might need additional resources. So that got me going.
Yeah. Well, you are, I think one of the first things that they should have done if they were going to drop the E of equity, one of the first things they should have done was to define what they meant by equity, right? And I think most of us who have common sense, we have a similar concept of what equity means. And I think they may have seen that as a political, kind of thing, and it sounded too liberal, perhaps, to say equity. And given that we know that that's not the stance of SHRM, particularly its president and their board members, maybe they wanted something that was more traditional, more conservative, and equity seemed a little bit too out there, right? But it's exactly what you're saying. If you can talk to anybody in the political spectrum and you can tell them, if you are the smartest person in a team, right? There's a lot of smart people, but you're the smartest person in a team, and you are on a wheelchair, and there's no ramp to go through the door in your office building, and you can't make it inside the office building to work, say, in a lab or whatever it is that you're doing, or to make it to the meetings. You can be the smartest person in the room, but you won't be in the room because there's no way for you to get into the room. So equity is knowing that everybody else who has their physical abilities, to enter into the office, they get what they get and they can get there. But equity is knowing that the building where you work built a ramp for you to get into your workspace and to be able to have that meeting with your coworkers, right? That's what equity means. It doesn't mean anything else. And, or well, it means a lot of other things, but that's mainly what it means. It means, like you said before, giving people access to the resources, to the tools, to the, to the opportunities they need to be able to achieve a similar outcome compared to other people that may not be in their same demographics or in their same groups and whatnot, right? Equity means, for example, and this happened a lot during the pandemic, equity means that if you are a single mother of 2 or 3 kids and you live a couple of hours away commuting to your office, equity means that you're given the opportunity to come to the office, one time a week, that you can decide on, because the rest of the time we want to give you back those 4 hours a day that you would be spending otherwise commuting, so that you can take care of your family, that you can drive your kids to school, whatever it is that you do, right? And that the person that perhaps doesn't need that can still come to the office to do the work from the office, and your leader assesses both of you, under that criteria, the criteria that one person has some conditions and the other person has a different set of conditions. That is equity. There's nothing, absolutely nothing wrong with that idea. And that's why, that's what I don't understand about SHRM, right? I don't understand if they had a different meaning or a different idea of what equity was, or if they were trying to play, kind of like, they were trying to serve, a master that was not really their master, And I think, that matters a lot. You said it before, there's no inclusion without equity, and there's no diversity without equity. You want to build a diverse workforce that includes, for example, people with disabilities. And if the person with a physical disability who is in a wheelchair cannot get to the office because there's no ramp to roll on the wheelchair, you won't have inclusion and you won't have diversity, because that person won't last too long in your organization.
Exactly.
You need the equity component to that. So it's fundamental. It's the cornerstone of inclusion and diversity. Equity is the cornerstone of inclusion and diversity.
No, it's 100% true. And I almost have nothing more to add, because I think you said precisely what is misunderstood. And really the reality here is that I think you're right. And I think you're also being very generous, which I can appreciate, that maybe there's just some element to what equity really is and means that wasn't taken into consideration.
I mean, for them,
and then there's,
I mean that for them, by the way, because I think most of us we know. I mean, I think most of us know and are in agreement, a little bit more words over here, a little bit less words over there. But I think most of us know what equity means. And I'm trying to give them a little bit of the benefit of the doubt to explain why they did
which
this.
I think is fair.
It's fair,
it's
I don't think the explanation will be in any way satisfying to any of us, but maybe they meant something different by equity, right? But I don't think so.
Right.
I think it's, again, there are concepts that are very standard, and you just define them and you stand up by them. You just say, we stand up by this, right? And equity matters, right? So, yeah.
Yes. So one of the things that I joked about on my Instagram live last week, and it was like a joke, but not really a joke, is that I really wanted a mole at SHRM. I need someone on the inside of SHRM to come on the podcast, or like send me a DM from a fake account to tell me why this decision was made, because I think that's really what I'm struggling with. And I think that's what a lot of us are struggling with, is that there is some element of this where we don't want to be conspiracy theorists. I always say, like, I don't prescribe to that. But because there's no logic in this decision, it leaves us to wonder, have they just turned our industry into something that's politically driven? Because that's not okay by me.
Yeah.
I want SHRM and all of these other HR organizations that are supposed to drive forward HR and our industry and things like that. I want them to be progressive and to drive what we're all really working on driving within our organizations. And if they can't do that, they should just move out of the way. And they should really just be authentic about who they are, if that's the case, rather than hiding behind what I would call a guise.
Yeah.
And, in an inauthentic approach to what they claim to be progression and, moving forward or moving the needle on DE&I. Like just get rid of the whole acronym entirely if you're going to take this stance.
Well, and the other thing is that, which again, goes back to I think SHRM members, and I am not a member of SHRM.
Me neither.
But SHRM members should demand a response to this, and I'm saying this, I'm trying, again, I don't give them too much the benefit of the doubt in general, but in this case, I'm trying to give them the benefit of the doubt. And I'm saying, if you're a member of SHRM, maybe your stance should be, I want to understand why, right? Because maybe there is a reason why you're doing this. And maybe it is a reasonable reason. Maybe it is a good reason that we are not seeing. And now we're going to see once you explain what that is. But that concept really was not bothering anybody, right? It's just there.
It was just hanging out, doing its thing.
It was not bothering anybody. Everybody was talking about it, but because it's part of our jargon and our conversation, but nobody was like looking at it like, what are you doing there? Like, why do
you have equity in the equation?
Why are you doing? We didn't notice you before, and now you're bothering. Just your presence is bothering me, right? So I don't think that's why it happened. So there's gotta be something, and there has to be a reason, and I am hoping that they, for the sake of the HR profession, because to my distaste, they are still the largest HR organization in the world. I don't want them to be, but they are. And they still go to Congress, to testify for whatever. And they pay lobbyists in Congress in the United States. And they have, several, activities going on. They are still the main certification that people get and that workplaces require from HR. So I am hoping that they explain what happened. If they made a mistake, that they backtrack and say, hey, we made a mistake. And I think, to me, honestly, even though I don't like them, to me, it's always a higher standard of, principles and values and ethics when you say, we messed it up, we made a mistake, we're sorry, we're not going to do this again. I'm going to say, wow, this is awesome, than just remaining silent in the background, not providing a rationale of why this happened, right? So, or why they did what they did. Again, I'm trying to give them a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. This is not generally the way I am with them. I am, when I see what they do something wrong, I am like, they did it and they did it on purpose, right? This time, I am trying to think maybe there is something that we can't see, and I am hoping that they step up. The same way their president, is like everywhere, like something, everywhere. I'm hoping that they take the chance now to say, hey, I'm gonna step up and say this is why we did this, right? But I'm not gonna hold my breath for that. But it would be the right thing to do. Yeah, it would be the right thing to do.
I totally agree. And I actually really appreciate that you're giving them the benefit of the doubt, because at the end of the day, these are HR professionals and other folks that work at SHRM, and an organization is not a reflection of all its people.
Yeah.
However, the CEO and president is really, and has been for quite some time, has really been putting forward initiatives that call into question the things that we have really been, as HR professionals, been promoting, rightfully so, within our organizations.
Yeah.
And I too am not a member of SHRM. I've always had a bit of a distaste for the organization, just because it felt a little antiquated to me, as an HR professional that really prides herself on innovation. It just didn't feel like a values match, and that's okay. And some people really love SHRM, and I think that's great too. But SHRM, at the end of the day, is not necessarily answering to its members. And actually, I can tell you, like, there are, and I agree, before I even tell you what I was about to say, I agree. I think members who are upset, because there have been people who are saying, I'm not going to continue my certification courses or recertification. And I think that's really where they're going to get a lot of pressure, because HR professionals on the majority are folks who really want to see these programs continue to live and breathe in organizations, including SHRM. But one of the things that I noticed on their original post, this is from really last week, they commented and they expanded by saying, having diverse perspectives is as critical as having racial, gender, national origin, and other dimensions of personal characteristic diversity. So while some may disagree with us on this issue, we appreciate the diversity of opinions and viewpoints expressed here. When arriving at the decision to focus on inclusion and diversity, SHRM fully contemplated all facets of the current DEI&B construct, which includes equity, E, belonging, B, and accessibility, A. Our research with countless business leaders and enterprises across the globe demonstrates the importance of emphasizing intentional inclusion and diversity. After all, our mission is to create better workplaces for a better world, and our focus is on I&D in practice and principle. At the end of the day, we can all agree we want to create change in workplaces. Again, we welcome all viewpoints, and let's keep the civil conversation going. So if you remember, or if you've noticed, they've been really emphasizing civility, which I don't think civility in any way replaces equity or I don't think they're mutually exclusive. Like you really can have both. And fundamentally, what really caught my attention is that they were saying that they did research with countless business leaders and enterprises across the globe. But it's honestly, it's comical because what strikes me when I read this today, again, July 18th, it's a Thursday, is that just before our recording started, I read that Microsoft has laid off their DE&I team. And I shared this with you before we started pressing record. And so when I read that now, a week later, I read that they've been researching and speaking with the globe's, biggest business leaders and enterprises. I'm reading, okay, so SHRM and Microsoft talked. Yeah. And they decided that DE&I is not all it's cracked up to be. And this is a great way to save some money.
Yeah.
That's what I'm reading now a week later. But I don't know. How do you read that?
Well, this is what to me is truly embarrassing and disappointing, right? And again, it's not that I was in any way excited about any of the things that they do. I am a pretty strong and vocal detractor of most of the things they do in general, right? Yeah, and people can see that on my LinkedIn, where and I keep this as a very personal perspective. By the way, none of the communities that I take part of have a collective as a community, have a collective perspective on SHRM, right? I do this as an individual, and I say this out of respect to the thousands of people that are part of the communities that I'm part of, some of whom, actually like, this direction, and they like SHRM's president, and they like SHRM, and I respect that, right? And I love having the right civil level of debates and conversations. But what I was going to say is that, to me, what's disappointing, like truly disappointing and borderline with embarrassing, is that you have an organization that it is explaining its decision based on what it was told by others, instead of saying, this is what we think should happen in the workplace. Now, I talk to you from, I don't know if it's Microsoft or whatever it is. I talk to any of these companies and they tell me, we don't think equity matters, so you should drop it. If I was SHRM, I would say, wait a second, I think it matters. And it matters for this and this and that. So instead of you telling me to drop the E, let me educate you for, on the reasons why E matters. So let me lead the way in telling you that E is important, or whatever else it is, right? It doesn't have to be equity. It's the many other things that SHRM messes up just because, some business leaders are telling SHRM, you got to drop this, you got to stop doing that because we don't like it, right? And of course, what they are playing to is, if Microsoft says we don't want to work with you anymore, there it goes, I don't know, 10,000 memberships, right? Or whatever it is. So a leader in the space says, I hear you and I understand your concerns, but hear me out, because I consider myself to be a leader in the space, and let me educate you about why this matters, why this is important. And that's the role that they relinquished. That's the role
Right.
that they gave up on. So anybody who listens to this, you want to get your certification because it is needed by to get a 5% increase, in your salary, or to get a promotion in your job, in your workplace. I know you got to do it. You don't have an alternative. You got to do it.
Right.
Now,
right.
Would I look to SHRM as the leader that is telling me where HR should be in the next 5, 10, 15 years? Forget about that, because they're going to take us to the abyss, right? And we want to be in the summit.
Right.
We want to be, this is one thing that I have said about HR for a very long time. I believe that HR has the potential to become a trailblazer. And a trailblazer, what is a trailblazer? A trailblazer is somebody who is ahead of everybody else, marking the route, marking the path forward for everybody else to follow. So within that concept, if you are giving up on equity because people are telling you that equity doesn't matter anymore, or they don't want it to matter anymore, you're not a trailblazer, because it matters. So your role should have been lead the people, lead organizations forward, and say, no, it matters, and this is why it matters. So even at the risk, at the peril of losing all your memberships, I'm going to stand by this, because in the next 5 years, when people look back at 2024, they will say, who wanted to drop E? Oh, this organization wanted to drop E. I don't want to have anything to do with that organization. I want to have to do something with the ones that stand up, or that stood up at that moment for the right things. And one of them is equity. So again, you need your certification. You need to continue to be engaged in this thing. I mean, so a lot of people, by the way, don't have an alternative. That's all they have, because their workplaces are still stuck in that model, and they need that kind of certification. Now, once again, if you want to look at progressive organizations that are leading the way forward for HR, that are turning HR into a trailblazer, SHRM is not it. As simple as that. That's and by the way, I gave them the benefit of the doubt before, but for this, I don't give them the benefit of the doubt. I don't think that is the kind of organization where we think that is leading the way forward. There are many others. There are many organizations. I take part on some of them, but there are many amazing people out there. I'm just like, when this happened last week, I was reading all these people, many of whom I knew, and some of them I didn't know. And I'm like, wow, this is incredible. How many people building communities, doing great things, for the HR profession. Follow them. For those are the people that you should be, sticking to, right? So anyway, I think that matters, because it's not just the equity thing. That's one more of the many things that SHRM is doing. And it will be, there will be one more in 2 months from now. And after the election in November in the US, there will be another one. Who knows what craziness they're going to come up with. And in January of next year, they're going to come up with something else. I don't know if you remember, in COVID, they went like really, like kind of crazy in the way they were trying to approach, the way we needed to work during COVID. So this is just one more, this is just one more of the many things that they have done, throughout the past, at least, 5-6 years.
5-6 years. Yeah. I 1000% agree with you. And I agree. And I loved what you said about what it is to be a trailblazer. And I really think that those who listen to my podcast prescribe to that they want to be trailblazers. They want to break into HR, or they're in HR and they really want to make a difference. And SHRM is not making a difference. In fact, it's really damaging the profession, at least based on the trajectory that it's going. And there are so many organizations, and I definitely want to go over some of the communities or people or organizations that people can connect with and maybe, switch over to in the event that they're looking for, a community that really is leading and forward thinking and thinking about what the right thing is to do, rather than what maybe the pressure financially, politically, or otherwise is putting on, is reflected on when we see some of these outcomes with SHRM. And I agree also that I think this is just the start. As I mentioned, I mean, a week and 2 days later, we are seeing that Microsoft pretty quietly laid off their DE&I.
I didn't know anything about it. You told me like a few hours back, or a couple of hours back.
Yeah, like Yeah, I mean, it's wild to
Yeah.
me that, you know, again, another huge employer in the United States and globally has decided that DE&I is what they actually said is that they are you know, they care about DE&I. They've laid off their team, but now they don't have the acronym of DE&I anymore. They have the acronym of D&I. And I was like, how fascinating is
Yeah.
that their acronym
Coincidental.
is the exact yeah, the
Yeah.
exact same as SHRM's. So, you know, at the end of the day, this is an iceberg. I think we're going to continue to see some fallout from this.
Yeah.
There are other companies that have laid off their DE&I teams, Zoom, John Deere, some others. I want to emphasize that you do not have to be in HR on a DE&IB team. You don't even have to be working to care about what diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging means
Yeah.
and what it does for people who are working or who want to work or who are trying to get back into work. I mean, I'll take myself as an example. I am a mother. Equity allows me to work remotely. It allows me the flexibility to work hours that that reflect when my nanny works because that's the way that I'm able to work, right? That's equity for me. It enables me to be included and it enables me to still be in the workforce, which is what I want to do. That
Yeah.
I want to stay in the workforce. If equity was not part of the equation at my employer, I would not be in the workforce.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like, it is fundamental to people being able to work, for people being able to have an enjoyable experience when they work, for them to get paid fairly. Like, it's everything.
It's
So,
everything. Yeah.
I mean, we just, you, again, I just want to emphasize you don't have to be in HR. You don't even have to manage people to care about DE&I and to see that it's like, keep politics out of it.
Yeah.
Let politics be politics. We didn't sign up for that.
Yeah.
We are just trying to make workplaces better. We're trying to improve people's lives. And obviously, the ethos of my podcast is to bring the human back to human resources. SHRM should just totally change the name of their business because, like, it's just like it doesn't fit. Like,
Yeah.
HR is not what they're focused on.
No.
So.
Yeah. And there's one component that I think it matters a lot, and this goes way beyond the dropping of the equity word. And it is that these organizations need accountability, right? I'm not sure if people are familiar with this, but number one, SHRM is a nonprofit, you know, first of all. And number two, is a $180 million a year revenue nonprofit. So,
Wow.
you know, this requires a massive level of accountability. A couple of years ago, by the way, uh, uh, somebody posted, and I had to do the research because I became very curious. They were funding a couple of political candidates, one on the Republican Party, one on the Democratic Party. And the reality is that it doesn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat, you should want SHRM to be out of politics. You know, so
1,000%.
You should want SHRM to be out of politics. You should. It was just like $10,000, by the way. They could have spent those $10,000 in giving, I don't know how many people, like their certification costs like $500 a year, so that's 20 people. They could have sponsored 20 people to get certifications in HR for those $10,000 instead of sponsoring the two political candidates that I know about. And this was like 2-3 years back. So all I'm saying is, whether you agree with the dropping of the E, or whatever you have in mind right now, this organization is making $180 million a year or something along those lines in revenue. You have to keep these people accountable for how they're using that money, and what they're using it, how much they are paying their president compared to other similar associations, by the way. And I'm not going to get into this because I know the numbers, because I have done the research on this. I just don't want to get into this. I want people to go into it and say, you know, hey, SHRM, you know, now that you dropped the word equity, you're becoming more, I'm paying you for my membership, I'm paying you for my certification. I think I want to know what you're doing with my money. You know, I think I want to know what you're doing with the sponsors' money. I think I want to know why the president of SHRM is an advisor to startups that he shouldn't be, you know, because he should be more neutral, right? So anyway, I think we require more accountability here. And the accountability not just for the dropping of the equity, but accountability that goes beyond that. Because once again, I am hoping for the day that when something needs to be testified in Congress for HR, there are many more people beyond SHRM that are invited to that. But because that's a reality now, they are speaking on behalf of HR. You need to keep them accountable for whatever it is that they are saying there. And because I don't want them to just speak for one massive company, right? I want them to speak for the HR profession. And more importantly, I would love for them to speak as a trailblazer and not as a follower, and that requires accountability. So I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt, but I am not giving their members the benefit of the doubt. You as a member, anybody as a member of SHRM, you guys have to keep these people accountable. It's not, this is not political. This is not because I like it or not. This is just the way it should be. As simple as that.
Totally. I love that. And actually it's kind of like saying we're going to give them the benefit of the doubt, but we're not going to give them a break.
No, exactly. Yeah. Why?
Right? It's like, yeah, they make tons and tons of money. And I love that we're not going to do the research. You can look up to see,
and it's public, by the way. Their tax returns are public because of the conditions of this organization.
Because they're nonprofit.
So you can just go, you can just Google, download the latest tax filing from them, see how much everybody makes in that organization, see how much money they are spending, in what they are spending that money. And when you see something that catches your eye, which you will, by the way, you will see some things in there that you are surprised perhaps, or confused. Let's use the word confused more than surprised. Involves like judgment, right? Let's say confused about why is this here, right? So then ask, hey, now that you guys are dropping the word equity, maybe I'm not that equitable with you anymore. Explain to me what's going on here, right?
Give me, seek to understand.
Seek to understand, because this is I don't like it, but so far and for the foreseeable future, that organization will continue to be the quote unquote voice of HR, at least in the political spectrum, right? I mean, we know, their president has been in the room with Trump in the past. I don't know if, with President Biden, they've been around, but they've been there. They invited Ivanka Trump, a few years back. So, they are the voice of HR, and I'm not making any political judgment. All I'm saying is we have to keep them accountable, and accountable to what pays their salary, and that's their members.
Well, they have huge influence, obviously.
Obviously.
So I fully appreciate this. I mean, and it really underscores that if they're grandstanding, they're in the political arena, they have to put forth the what is going to move the needle forward for HR professionals, not to set us back, because I don't think any of the members are prescribing to the idea of their careers being set back. And it doesn't mean that one political prescription is greater or less than the other. There has to be some involvement from leaders in government around workplace initiatives and what matters and all that. Like that, obviously, from a labor standpoint, matters. But at the end of the day, to your point, if they have this much influence, they have to also own their decisions and, to your point, be accountable and be held accountable for decisions that don't reflect the interests of their members.
And not only that, by the way, I'm going to add one more thing. I love public debate. I love that approach, right? Where you sit with somebody else that completely disagrees with you, because I always think that you have something to learn from that person has something to learn from you, and the ultimate outcome of that conversation will always be a little enlightenment on both parts, and a little bit of a better outcome than if you had continued to think the same way you narrowly were thinking about, right? So what am I saying with this? If you think dropping the word equity was the right way to go, don't do it in secrecy. Maybe tell people we are thinking about this. We want the most, like strongest, SHRM haters in the world. And we want the most, obtuse equity aficionados in the world on the table. We want to debate this with you, because we want to convince you that we need to drop the word equity. And we want to hear from you why we shouldn't drop the word equity. That conversation would have made HR a million times better across the board, from the people who don't like the word equity and the people who like the word equity. It would have made HR significantly better than it is if they had been open to public debate, instead of doing this in secrecy and just coming out of it with, hey, we're dropping the word equity, right? And this is true for everything that we do in HR. If you represent HR, don't just bring 10 people to design your certifications and, to secretly, kind of like, decide on content. Open up public debate. They supposedly, they didn't, right? But, they say that they had 26,000, people at the Chicago conference. I don't think, not only don't I think they didn't have 26,000 people in Chicago, but if they did, what an incredible opportunity to have opened up the debate and tell people we are thinking about dropping the word equity, and we booked 20 rooms here with 20 facilitators for you to go into those rooms and tell us whether we're doing the right thing or the wrong thing and why. And from that, we will grow. But there's no accountability. There's a lot of secrecy. There's no public debate. And we need this. We need public debate in the space of HR. We don't have that. We don't have that.
Yeah.
So yeah, come on. Like just, I mean, again, like you said before, if this is what you want, just open up the debate and tell people why this is what you want. Maybe you convince us that that's the right decision. I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe we end up being convinced that dropping equity is the right thing to do.
Maybe with the transparency, right? Maybe if we had some answers, some background, some context.
Of course, we can change our minds. I don't think it's the right decision, but maybe, we could change our minds if there was, openness and transparency about this, but there isn't. So I think I respect a lot the members of SHRM. Their chapters do a phenomenal work engaging the community.
Yes, they do.
Very busy. The facilitators that are training people to take the certifications. I see people saying, I feel so proud of myself because I got the SHRM certification. Kudos to all of you, because all of you are trailblazers trying to make HR better. But you are under a banner that is making a big disservice to all of us. So all you got to do right now, whether you believe in equity or not, whether you think this or that, whether you are in this political side or in that political side, all you got to do is demand transparency, accountability, and public debate about the things that SHRM and any other HR organization should be representing if they are representing you.
Amen to that. There's nothing more to say. I think that at this point, we just have to kind of wait and see, and hopefully those who are members of SHRM or have certifications through SHRM hear the call to action that you've just shared with them, which I think is a great one. Whatever you think of this, wherever you sit on the political spectrum, even if it doesn't matter to you, ask questions, make your questions matter, make your membership, make your dollars matter, because they do.
Yeah.
And let's see what unfolds. I'll be very interested. Maybe we'll have to bring you back on, Enrique, if some more shakes out from this. We'll see.
I mean, worst case is what already happened. We don't have explanation, and they already did something that most of us consider to be wrong. Best case, you make SHRM better. I don't think that's going to happen, by the way. But best case, you make SHRM better. When you start asking questions, you say, hey, what are we doing here? And maybe you force them to take a stance on, we believe in this because of these reasons, and that makes them better. I mean, why wouldn't you want to do something like this, right? Again, they're representing you. They go to Congress on your behalf, right? Or supposedly on your behalf. You just have to keep them accountable. That's all.
That's right. Well, on that note, what are some communities, if you're able to share, what are some communities or like arenas, I guess, in the HR space that folks who really are looking to prescribe to a more trailblazing or transparent organization that aligns with what they're looking for, what are some of those communities and arenas?
Yeah, well, I mentioned two, of course, the two that I take part of, Hacking HR, the community that I created and I advise now. And, lots of good things going on in there. Transform, which is another incredible community, truly making a difference in the world of HR and really wanting to build better, like, that motto of SHRM, which is, better workplaces. I don't think they embrace what that means. They don't embody what that really means. Transform does. And that excites me a lot. And it's one of the reasons why I am so committed to building a global community for them as well. And there are many others. I'm not going to go into each of one. I wanted to mention these two because they're the ones that I take part of. But you just go to my own LinkedIn, and there are many people out there. There's Lars and the guys from Noetic, and there's the guy. There's Kim from Peak HR, and then there's Tracy from Troop HR. Lots of great people out there. And the beauty of this, by the way, first of all, there should be a million communities of HR. I would never, when people ask me like, oh, do you think you're competing with this community? I'm like, no, there's so much pie and cake for
There's
everybody.
so much.
There are not enough mouths to eat all the cake. So there's just we need more communities.
The more the merrier.
Oh my gosh, we need more communities, and especially what happens right now is that not only I think that we need more communities, is that every community is offering something different or with a different angle, right? So you go to Hacking HR and you get something. You go to Transform and you get something different. You go to large community, you get Amplify, you get something different. You go to Tracy's Troop HR or Disrupt HR or Eric Kurshat, my friend in Chicago, with this HR hot seat. In every community, you get something, a little bit of a different take, right? And, a little thing here, a little thing there. Be part of as many communities as you can. I think that is very, very healthy. It is incredibly unhealthy that we are only represented by SHRM. It's incredibly bad, unhealthy. It is awful to be represented only by one organization. That's why, I just mentioned the 2 that I take part of, like about 5 more, and there are probably, 40 more in the US alone, right? So just find out, and find your tribe. If it's Hacking HR, if it's Transform, you will find yourself in a place where you're like, oh, I like these people. I like hanging out in here. And that's it. That's it. So there's a lot going on out there. Really, really, like you, Tracy. Really wonderful people doing a phenomenal service for HR. And I am so proud of each of them. I've been doing this Hacking HR thing for 7 years now. A lot of these communities didn't exist, when I started doing this. And I am so proud of what they're doing because, it's good to know that you're not alone, to know that even if we're doing things differently, we believe in how amazing HR is and potentially how much more amazing it can be. So anyway, that's kind of like my call to action. Just go to those communities and check them out. They're doing an amazing job. Yeah.
I totally agree. Enrique, thank you so, so much for helping me break down this very, very important topic. And I'll make sure that all of your LinkedIn links and Hacking HR and all of these places where you are connecting with people, I'll make sure those are in the show notes.
Thanks.
And for folks who want to get connected with Enrique, you definitely need to at least start by following his LinkedIn page because there's so much great stuff there. And Enrique, like I said in the beginning, I really admire the work that you're doing in this space. And I just so truly appreciate you coming on my podcast this week to break down something that I think we'll continue to see unfold in the weeks and months and potentially years to come. We'll see.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tracy, for inviting me. Thank you so much.
Hey, just before you go, don't forget to subscribe to this show so that you are the first to hear when an episode drops each week. And maybe leave a 5-star review and a comment about how much you loved this episode. Plus, if you have someone in mind who would really enjoy this episode, make sure you share it with them. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you next week.